Well, welcome everybody. I've got a fantastic guest speaker today for us to listen to. Ann Rawlings, Gecko's Hospitality Group. She's been with Gecko's for such a long time, so knowledgeable about marketing. Everybody say hi to Ann. Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for
Hi.
coming in. She does it all over there. So we're going to hear a lot about her take on the importance of marketing with restaurants, restaurant concept, and the restaurant business. So welcome, Ann. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thanks, Joe. It's great to be with y'all again. And the Gecko's Hospitality Group's enjoyed a nice long friendship with the USF-CIL. So it's good to see you.
Fantastic.
And appreciate you having me.
This is wonderful. Great stuff. So before we get into the marketing questions, and there's always a question that students love to hear about from guest speakers and from industry experts like yourself is how did you get into this crazy business that you love so much now, and sort of just give us a little sort of background history of how Ann got to where she is today.
Well, it's a long and winding road, but the short version is, like most people, I worked in restaurants in college and fell in love with the industry and the people and the excitement, but took a different academic path and ended up going into the legal industry and got a paralegal background and worked for Turner Broadcasting and City of Park City, Utah, and a global engineering and design firm. And long circuitous route, 2008, there was about 200 vice presidents fired in 1 week. And my company rehired me 3 months later to work back home in the Sarasota office. And what I worked on there was a whole lot of public infrastructure projects with a graphic artist and a engineering marketing team. And you wonder how that would translate into hospitality, and it really didn't at all. But what did happen was when the bottom fell out in 2012, the continued bottom falling out, two of my longtime friends, Mike Gowan and Mike Quillen, contacted me, and I had sort of been doing some research projects for them. We were looking for some local grass-fed beef that was doing their processing on site. And they said, we've been working out of a general manager's closet in all the restaurants for these 20 years. And we're thinking maybe we need to get a corporate office together, and would you like to do it? So I said, great. And took it as a huge compliment that these guys trusted me with their brand. And we got to work and we started setting up systems and email systems and communication systems and employee handbooks. And so the legal background kind of came into play on the HR side. And then the design component came into play big time later because I started wearing several different hats because there had been no corporate office. And so we created one, and eventually the public relations came to me. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
Wow.
Not a straight route to where I am today.
And just real briefly, you're early on, like going back, what sort of education did you have to prepare for this? I know you were talking about law. What sort of, did you have any specific degrees that you think are relevant?
Yeah. I got a degree in English from the University of Florida, and then did some post-bac work in creative writing, and then started a small business, but went back to school later and got a paralegal degree. And when I was at Turner, I worked in the general counsel's office, and we were in charge of all the sports teams. So the Atlanta Hawks, the Atlanta Braves, the Thrashers. It was a super, super exciting time to be there. And it was during that time I focused on contracts and some of the HR stuff, but the labor and employment end. And then when I worked for the city, it was a whole lot of limiting the exposure of the city as my client. And then when I went to work for AECOM, we were constantly bidding for jobs in the public realm. So the constancy of that journey really has served me well, because I'm always thinking about, ways to limit the exposure of the company. But you can learn that on site as well, because those things happen every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing how when you look back at your experience and everything you've done to kind of lead up to where you are today, it's somebody like yourself who worked so hard and has done so many things. It almost looks like it was like you knew you were going to get to this position, but in hindsight, it's sort of not. But it's just the fact that you've been working so hard and gathering all this knowledge, and now it's certainly paying off, and it's relevant to everything you do. And I think that says a lot, and maybe that's why Geckos has been so successful, why they've survived this COVID craziness. So man, they're lucky to have you, Ann.
Oh, thanks. But really, all credit goes to the rock stars I work with every day and that I work alongside and who I support from behind the scenes. Those are my real heroes, and those are the real Geckos heroes, is our managers, our general managers, everybody from the 16-year-old kid getting his first job in the restaurant to one of our general managers who is a good friend who just celebrated his 20th anniversary with us. So really all credit goes to Mike and the people I work with. I just tell the stories.
No, they're wonderful guys, man. And I'm sure great teammates. So, okay. So marketing, right? I think you know a little bit about marketing. That was my major at UF, but I certainly don't have as much experience as you do in real life. So how important is marketing to the restaurateur? I mean, is it needed to be successful? And I know that's just a wide open question, but what do you think of when I ask you about the importance of marketing?
Yeah, it's crucial. The first thing that we always try to focus on is who's our audience, who are we trying to talk to, and because we have so many different properties, the Geckos have their own identities. Some of the Bradenton guests are different age demographic or a different taste, if you will, food taste, than say the folks who are coming from downtown and having a cocktail at Hillview. So we have a wide range of guests that we cater to. But one of the things that we always like to emphasize in our corporate culture is that we have a menu that's accessible to everybody. And that's kind of a recurring theme throughout all of the promotional work that I do. But yes, marketing's crucial. And fortunately now we have, the wide, wacky, wild west of social media. So whether you're a small independent like we are, or a giant corporate entity, franchisees all over the country like the Longhorns and the Applebee's of the world, marketing is very important. That's how you tell your story. That's how you make yourself meaningful to your guests. It's how you show them that you care. It's how you show them that you have a great product. And it means a lot, but it doesn't have to cost a lot.
Yeah. So knowing your guests, being able to tell your story and create your brand, and that brand, hopefully will really do it. I guess
Yeah.
the optimum job and really optimize all your products that you have, whether it's events or food or service. Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely. And to that point, Joe, we have a great story, and it's nothing I created. It's Mike and Mike's story. So no matter whether you're blessed like I was to come into a company that has a great story, or you're just working with a restaurant group that's starting up, you've got to find a way to tell something to your guest that's interesting, that they can identify with, that's good, that's uplifting. And everybody has something in their story that you can focus on to make it appealing.
That's right. That's right. You mentioned social media, the wild west of social media, and I guess that's probably the first thing that comes to mind when I think of marketing, how it's changed. But how has your understanding of marketing changed over your entire career up to this?
Oh, it's
because that's
just
one of the major changes, and then.
Well, it's just constantly changing. Technology is your best friend and your worst enemy, because it's in real time. And so if you're going to put yourself out there, you better damn well be ready to receive the questions and receive the maybe not so good posts and be ready to turn it around. But, you know, it's been a great thing for us because print media was expensive when I first started working with our group, and social media really kind of opened up all kinds of doors for us. What we do is concentrate on a few platforms. Again, it's depending on who we're trying to reach, but we focus mainly on Facebook, Instagram, and I do some LinkedIn stuff too when I'm, you know, trying to promote, for example, a Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association event or something really big that we're doing that appeals to a professional group, or when I'm looking for managerial labor, then I'll go on to LinkedIn for some of the other things. But our day-to-day is basically Facebook and Instagram, and we love Snap and we love all the other stuff too. But it became to the point where you really want to be strong on a few platforms and not just dissipate your message and be just throwing mud at the wall just to have something being posted. So that's kind of how we approach social media, but it's constantly changing hour by hour.
Yeah, it's probably not easy. There's so many different choices. I like how you said that, sort of concentrate on in one area or two areas, not try to juggle every social media tool there is, right?
Right.
So when we think of marketing, when I think of it in the classroom with students, you know, we say marketing is going to help you develop a new concept. It's going to help you promote your business, and then of course you brought up, I think, a key component of marketing is knowing your guests and finding out who your target market is, and that'll maybe help you then go after and promote your business. But can I ask you, how does Gecko understand its guests? What do you do to find out who your guests are, who your target core guests are? How does that work with Geckos?
Well, I go into the restaurants and I talk to my general managers, and guests write to me, and I know the city that I'm living in, and I grew up here. So I see things changing and I take note of it. And I talk to the servers and I listen to Mike and Mike, and I see what the daily sales are doing and who's having a good day and who's selling more spirits than the others and who's more into you know, a age group that eats early, for example. And you know, Sarasota's been changing so much over the last 10 years that it's been an evolution. You know, Mike and Mike always make me laugh when they tell the story of when the first Geckos opened, they were young single guys in their 30s, and they like to say that it was 80% booze and 20% food. And that's what the guest was coming for. It was kind of like a, you know, nightclub sort of atmosphere. And then over time, they started getting married, having babies, and now it's definitely more food centric, and the food has been getting awards. And
Yep.
you know, we still have the small batch spirits and the great craft beers, and we're still a sports bar atmosphere, but you know, things evolve and you want that. So we've evolved with the guest.
Yeah, that's important too, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
that sort of have your thumb on the pulse, so to speak. And yeah, you
Yeah.
rattle off just a bunch of great actions there as a manager or somebody really interested in understanding their target market. You know, the boots on the ground, listening to people, your guests, your staff, and always be observant. And that's just great advice for our students to hear. Um,
Well,
Obviously,
and back to your point about the social media, I mean, you got to pay attention to the great gift that you're receiving back from your social media, which is your data. I mean, that's the reason you have loyalty programs, and that's the reason you have social media presence, is to see who's liking what, and to see who's like, blah, blah, I'm not that interested in that. So you take that, you mine that, and you use it to your advantage to make sure people are engaged.
what do you think about the talk of, I guess the phrase is, it's been around not just the past month, but for a couple of years now, the whole term of big data. and using all that is understanding big data and mining that big data, not just your simple demographic and textbook type of marketing data, but this whole big data craze on collecting of all this information. Is that something for independents, or is that something more for bigger corporate restaurants? I mean, is it something that you think is going to be around? Like, is it not leaving? Is it here to stay? And is it something that's an independent could use?
If you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have had a different answer than I have today. So yes, it's constantly changing. And yes, big data is important. And yes, also small data is important. And if you're looking at a macro scale of big data, you better be sure you've got somebody who's mining that data. A loyalty program is useless if all you're going to do is give rewards and give stuff away and send out a newsletter. But if you're not learning where your zip codes are, what your age group is, who loves this and who responds to that, or if they come out in droves for a tap take overnight, or if they're kind of so-so about it, if you aren't mining that data, then big data is really of no use to you. But there's college curriculums in big data, and we are not, as a small independent, we are not at a point where we do have a dedicated person to mine that data. And I'll tell you a really important point that you're bringing up, Joe, is data protection. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of the small independents are now struggling with a existential question about loyalty programs and newsletters. And if you look at the GDPR, which was the European trend to have data protection on all the things that people are giving you, their name, even their surname, even their title, their telephone number, all of that is considered personal information. And, if you're collecting loyalty program information, you're going to have to be watching, because it went from Europe to California. We had a piece of legislation in the Florida legislature this year about data protection. And what happens is, the legislators are understandably concerned about protecting consumers' rights. But in the process, they need to hear from businesses like ours, because the unintended consequences of data protection for a consumer mean that a small business has to invest an awful lot of money, maybe a whole new full-time position for somebody who's going to make sure people get opted out on time or not cross any lines. And the fines are hefty. So keep an eye on data protection. You're going to see that in the legislature again next year, I'm sure. And there's going to be an awful lot of talk in the hospitality industry about, is it worth having newsletters and loyalty programs, and not just restaurants, but our hotel partners as well. We're more a small data collector, like I said, and big data is crucial for the big boys, but we're the little fishies on that.
Well, I like how I think that's a term. It's such the obvious counter is, what about small data, but I think what you brought up too is just that pushback from guests as far as all this, this heavy data mining that all these companies are doing. And that's interesting. That's certainly, I would qualify that as a trend, this legislation coming in to protect people's personal information. But you're right. I mean, so if even if you're an independent and you're using, I guess you're kind of more and more going after the small data. That's such a great point, Ian. What you said is, you just don't want to use that information and just give stuff away. You want to learn from your data and learn how it maybe redefines your target market, maybe how it might redefine your menu or your concept. That's brilliant.
100%.
Well said.
100%. Yep. Our menu changes a lot over time. In the last 10 years, some things are tried and true that people love, and they will always be on the Geckos menu. But some things we've tried just, haven't really resonated with guests. And, those point of sales, the small data, and the social media likes and shares, the small data, that stuff really impacts how a company like ours tailors its menu.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to say that that term. I remember hearing about that term, big data, years ago, and I remember it was about a year and a half ago. I remember sitting down and interviewing, and I was with another IT guy. And IT, I'm not an IT guy. But I partnered with because he wanted to connect with hospitality people and talk to corporations. The Hyatts, the Westons, the Longboat Key, the Ritz Carlton people. We even talked to First Watch people too as well, and we talked to their marketing people. And that was one of the main drivers of these questions was how are they using big data. And I was surprised because the answers we got was we don't know what to do with big data. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting all this information and I remember I'll never forget the GM at Ritz Carlton, and he had GM and some other people there, and I think they had the controller in there too as well. And I was surprised. I thought they're going to have all these answers and the systems in place and the silver bullet type of answers. And what they told us was that it was sort of overwhelming for them. So if that's the case with these corporations, I can imagine, which it makes sense what your answer was as far as kind of just dialing it back a little bit and kind of going after that small data and not getting overwhelmed with all these trends in big data. So interesting.
Yeah, and the info's there. You just have to listen and you have to look for it, and you'll find what you're looking for on the data.
That's it. Fantastic. Great. So just one last question for you, Ann. So if looking into the future, I guess you've already kind of sort of brought up one as far as protecting people's personal information. But now looking into the future, do you see any other major shifts or changes in how restaurants may use marketing?
Well, I can tell you that in addition to the alcohol to go and the huge percentage increase in online ordering, those trends will continue to gain more steam. Ghost kitchens will continue to gain more steam. They're already, starting to get pretty well established. But, as far as our company, there's some things that will always remain constant. And those are things that those bedrocks are as important, I think, as the things that evolve. And one of those things is if you connect with your community, if you give back to your community, if you make sure that you are partnering with the groups that are important to you, whether it's philanthropic or schools or veterans and military or industry colleagues, whatever it is, you can't call it marketing because that's really sleazy. But what you can call it is business partnerships. And those business partnerships are so vital, and they have been a bedrock of what we've done in the community. And what we've done is make sure that we have a charitable component to every kind of a storied presence that we might put forth. So people know us because we are always, targeting the military and veterans for our charitable, our charitable well-being. But all the schools know us because of our business partnerships. Those things will not change. And as important as keeping your finger on the pulse of what's evolving is to, if you're looking to be someone who is serving a restaurant as their marketer and their public relations person, get your bedrocks, follow your mission statement, know your audience, support your team. Those are the people, the boots on the ground every day.
Yeah.
And tell the stories, because there's great stories with the people that you work with.
Great advice. That's great advice. How the importance of connecting with your community and building those partnerships. One last question, and this is only a sort of a sidebar question because I was talking about it literally a couple hours ago with somebody, and I wanted to get your take on it. I made a note on it. As far as trends go, we all know about the third-party delivery stuff that's been going on with Grubhub and DoorDash and all that stuff, and he brought up sort of a pushback on the third-party delivery system, where a lot of restaurants are just doing it to do it. They don't make a whole lot of money, or their profits low, and it's sometimes it's not worth their time, but they're doing it because the guests sort of expect it. But sort of the pushback is, and I'm not sure if this is a trend or if it's going to happen, or you might have heard about this already, but how, and I guess now they're calling it direct online ordering, where the restaurants are taking back that sort of a third party delivery system, where they're sort of, and before they were sort of giving it away to the third party, but now they're sort of able to build a system or build a platform that'll kind of do it for them, for their business, so they don't have to rely on a Grubhub or a. What do you think about that? Is that new, or is that a
Joe,
trend?
that has been on our plates for 5 years. We have had a love-hate relationship with third-party delivery services, mostly hate,
Yeah.
because they took our name, they took our brand, they took old menus, they popped them up on the Introsphere and said that we were partnering with them, and we were not.
Wow.
The worst thing about that was that the guest was the one who would show up to my managers and say, I ordered from you guys and this guy delivered it and it was cold. And we would be like, well, we don't have a partnership with them.
Wow. Interesting.
They would say, well, they just told us to complain to you. So we had no control over our most precious asset, which is our brand, our food, and our guest, because they were not recovering the guest. Our information was being falsely represented. And when they finally did come clean and asked us to start partnering with them, and we went with a small local company that they were acquired since then. But yeah, it's hard when you're a fast casual, a polished casual concept, a sports bar, to give 33% of what your food costs, and those price points aren't that high, to somebody who's just coming and picking it up. So we have been watching, again, legislatively. I think you can tell by now, I kind of wear a government relations hat too. Yeah. But we've been watching that legislatively. I mean, California led the way and just started outlining the third-party delivery fees. The third-party delivery companies started getting cease and desists from restaurants like ours. And now they are amazingly more receptive to less than 33%. But what it's done is it's pushed us to find out how we can do our own internal delivery. And I think some folks are going to always, partner with the third-party delivery services. There are some good ones out there, I'm sure, but it's kind of like a cage fight. You're kind of circling each other warily, and you really don't want to deal with each other, but you kind of know that you both need each other to get through it. But I think you're 100% right. You're going to see tons of changes on that. Even small independents like us are really having serious conversations about what it would take to set up our own in-house delivery.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think some of the POS systems are getting, they've been getting into that as far as helping a restaurant do that. I think Toast was
Toast is one. Yeah. It's the integration with the point of sales that is going to drive whether smaller restaurants can do it. And apps are going to be another thing you're going to be seeing a lot of, Joe. Independents, the big boys, again, they're doing this already, but the independents are going to start taking back control of their brand and their guests and starting to do online apps, which is going to be great.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. Well, this has been fantastic, and can't thank you enough. And I just feel smarter than I was 35 minutes ago. So I appreciate that, for you raising my IQ point there. A final question for you. I know students that are going to be listening to this are going to want to check out opportunities at Geckos, and maybe they might have an interest. Is there a job board or a website or something they can go and check out? And because I know Mike was always on me for that. He was like, we want to see your students. So
we do. It's, part of the reason why it's so great having a friendship with the CIL and you and Chef Gary and then back in the day, Chef Brian and where we began. But yeah, we have an online application, and it's on our website, which is geckosgrill.com.
Right.
Or you can come in person. Or, feel free and share my information, Joe, if I can help anybody. We are always hiring. We are always looking for talent. Our managers do very, very well. Like I said, we're one of the companies that can boast a decades-long manager teams. We're one of the good employers. We're one of the good guys, and we offer an awful lot of benefits. And it's a great company and a good working environment. And don't let anybody tell you that hospitality doesn't pay, because we pay. So
That's fantastic. Fantastic. That's great to hear. And when you should see a website coming up right there to check out, folks. If you're listening to this, I'll make sure that that gets out to everybody. And yeah, I mean, fantastic. I mean, it's certainly a fun company. I've always heard great things about people that do work there. But again, Ann, thanks for your time. This has been wonderful.
thank you.
So much.
Such a pleasure. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.